welcome to the Life of a Global Desi,
the podcast that connects like minded Desis all over the globe by conforming to stereotypes and breaking them.
Join us both on a journey as we uncover what it means to be a global Desi.
Keep listening.
On to our episode now. Hi Aarti, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well as well.
Oh my god. No, you know what I just thought about? Something that we all do at my new workplace is this thing called socio-emotional learning. So basically, I work with an education nonprofit, and it's like really promoting this idea of socio-emotional learning in our schools and classrooms, which is having a healthy relationship with your emotions and really building a community around just having all kinds of emotional support that you need, right? So it's a very different experience because we start off our meetings with asking each other, how are you doing? And then we all like share all the different emotions that we're feeling, but also like it's not just good to let people around you know how you're feeling, but also it's a practice to recognize how you yourself are feeling, which I think a lot of us don't tend to do. There's a huge list of emotions that we choose from and we pick from, and I was just thinking like it's such a beautiful community that we're building at our workplace, and it's so counter culture in so many ways because usually when you ask people how are you feeling, the usual response is, oh, I'm good, how are you? Yes, I'm good too. And then on with your day, right? At your workplace or anything like that. So this is just like very refreshing to feel this way and have
Yeah,
this.
going back to my workplace, I think you're absolutely right. I use how you're doing or anybody I've interacted with also uses how you're doing almost as a greeting. It's hey,
Yeah.
what's up? Hey, how you doing?
It's less
And
of a question, it's like, or less inquiry, more just
a greeting. It's
hello. Yeah.
yeah, it's almost like hello is too abrupt, so you follow it up with hey, how's it going? And then all you say is I'm doing good. How are you? And then they say yeah, everything's going great. And then you kind of just move on, even if you're walking across the hallway or you meet at the coffee counter or at your desk. So yeah, we've definitely not promoted that culture of really sitting down and talking
Yeah.
about it. But I also think it's just a matter of like the industries that we both work in.
Yeah.
Mostly corporate strategy, private equity. These are like not places where people are sitting and chatting you up about how
Which
you
is,
tell me about it. Tell me about your day. Tell me about your emotional state
tell
right
me
now.
about
So
your
so that's not
life. Yeah.
happening. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's super interesting. Although, like, we were also, like, at our workplace quoting research that Google did around what makes the most efficient teams, like, efficient, right? Or, like, qualities of a high performing team. And I don't know if you've heard about this piece of research, but they, like, did a cross functional, cross country, like, research in depth about what are some of the highest performing teams, what are they coming with and what do they bring to the table. Apparently what came out of it was not like high performing individual teammates or like complementary skill sets, or not even like diversity within the team for different points of views. The number one determining factor was actually psychological safety or emotional safety that teams feel in actually being themselves and bringing their whole selves to work, and also like being having the space to be vulnerable, and really like that's where you're building a community of almost this family or the sense of community, and that's apparently known to be the biggest driver of high performing teams,
Yeah. No, I
as
completely
research by Google.
agree.
Yeah.
Although like I may not have had too much experience being in or I guess choosing to work at workplaces which have the whole concept of bring your whole self to work. I've had that experience at business school where your learning team in your first year pretty much becomes your rock. So six of us are put together based on an algorithm where it's completely different backgrounds, nationalities, work background, personalities, and gender, ethnicity, all of that. And I found that was very very well done because I did feel like it was a completely safe space and it pretty much like helped me grow as a person. And I felt like that was the only time in my life, outside of Teach for India, of course, where I felt like I was part of a very, very high performing, psychologically and socially safe zone, and I could bring my whole self to work. So yeah, I mean, I've had that experience, but
That's good.
it's hard to come by, and you should be grateful for it.
I am. I'm very grateful. And
Okay. And I'm noticing that we're at 5 minutes.
Exactly.
In the spirit of keeping this minimal, what are we talking about today, Aarti?
We are talking about why we should try minimalism. And it's an
Awesome.
interesting topic. And this is something that I have personally, had a little experience with. There was a phase in my life where I tried minimalism for like a whole year, if not 2 years. It was a very interesting experience. So, yeah, to start off, do you want to fill us in with your research and your definitions? I'm sure you have done some of that because you always start off with that.
As usual, listeners, I have research on what is minimalism, and the exact definition and origin and all of that. So, according to Oxford Dictionary, in the academic sense, minimalism is a term that was coined in the 1950s around the arts, right? So it was a trend in sculpture and painting that typically was called simple versus the impressionist and expressionist era before that, which was like extremely intricate and it was an avant-garde, which is basically a new movement in music or the arts, which basically had like very simple form. That's at the essence of it, right? But the way we use minimalism now in the current cultural context is more from a lifestyle sense and lifestyle perspective, where there's this whole new age idea or like woke idea about living with less and simple living, adopting a philosophy of really getting rid of excess in your life, living a life based on valuing experiences more than worldly possessions. And
And also
honestly,
not defining yourself by the things that you own. A symbol of prosperity or wealth back in the day, right? How many cars you own, how big your house is. I feel like now there's this counterculture movement where tiny home living is like all the rage. And like the Netflix series Tiny Home Nation, I absolutely love that. And I love the idea of owning a really small home that has just all the basic, most needed things. A friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, her philosophy is that everything in my house needs to either have utility or it has to be beautiful. It's either got utility or beauty, one of the two things. And if any object does not fall in either of those two categories, then I don't need it in my life, essentially.
and obviously one of the new age minimalism gurus is like Marie Kondo, right? So what you said about, is it beautiful, does it spark joy in your life, that adds value to your life, right? You also have a podcast around this called The Minimalist, and there's also a Netflix series called The
Yeah,
Minimalist.
they have these two guys in it, right?
I think Joshua and I forget what the other person's name is, but they are also
Yeah,
promoting
it's
this
pretty
entire
cool.
philosophy around asking that important question about, do I really need this versus is this just something I'm holding on to, or is this something that I
Yes.
want?
And something else that I saw in that documentary was also this idea of a lot of the times we hold on to things because they hold like an emotional value, and then you say, "Oh, I am so emotionally attached to this thing because it was given to me by so and so, and either they're no longer present in your life and so on and so forth." But they really deconstruct that idea beautifully, where they say that the feelings that you have towards that person are still there, and you won't be seeing that object on everyday basis. So a quick solution to that, or this idea of hoarding, according to them, is just take a picture of that object, because if you look at that picture of that picture, even you will still feel the same way, and you don't
Yeah.
need to own that picture, essentially.
Yeah, I definitely started doing that after, obviously being inspired by you, and you should definitely talk about the experiment that you did in your life. But I
Yes.
started taking pictures of all my birthday cards and greeting cards and really like, recycle the rest. And I have pictures of it when I want to look at it, versus like lugging around years and years of greeting cards and letters and any physical paper object, right?
Yes. obviously one might argue saying, oh, a physical book is so much better than a Kindle, or like actually touching something is, so much more tangible, a tangible way of like experiencing something. But still, like, I guess,
Yeah, I'm choosing convenience and
yep,
functionality and just
exactly.
practicality over the strong emotional feelings I have towards it. I mean, if I really want to look at it, I'll look at it on my phone, and I look at pictures all the time. I get like very nostalgic looking at
She
photographs and
does.
pictures. Yeah.
She like randomly sent pictures from like 10 years ago on the
And be
family
like,
group,
hey
and she'll be
guys,
like,
10 years ago, this is
this
what we
date
were doing.
today.
Trust me, I
Yeah,
do that with my friends as well. I'm always about,
I
hey
believe
guys, one
that.
year back we were doing this. Oh man, look at 3 years ago we were doing this on
Yeah.
this day.
So
So,
basically, goes to say that you can be
yeah.
both practical and, someone with a lot of feelings. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Tell us
But
about the experiment you did. I'm
oh
excited to hear
yes.
about it.
Okay. So it was when actually I kind of felt like this strong urge to be minimalist, like right after my experience where I was on the Antarctica expedition and I got back, and I've always been like an environmentalist all my life. So I kind of took it to this whole new level with the whole zero waste lifestyle, living in less than 100 items that you own. So
Yeah,
I
like
tried
overall, everything that you touch
everything
and
included,
use.
the number of underwears you own, the number of clothes you own, like
Yeah.
everything that you use. So it was interesting, and I really tried that, and it wasn't difficult at all. Like in terms of clothes, for me especially, it wasn't all that difficult. Maybe because I had the advantage of having you in my life, and I have always borrowed things from you, clothes wise, like pretty dresses and things like that. But in terms of the basic clothes that I owned that entire year, people literally saw me in four kurtas at work that I only wore, and my mom and dad would actually joke saying like, we our eyes are sore just looking at you in the same things over and over again. But I was just so into this whole idea of minimalism and like quoting Mark Zuckerberg and like Steve Jobs, because they both have like literally a uniform that they wear, right? Like,
Sure.
yeah, so like Steve Jobs always used to wear his black turtleneck, and Mark Zuckerberg always wears his gray
Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg.
It's fine.
Thank you. Zuckerberg always wears his gray t-shirt.
I read about it. His gray t-shirt is apparently some $1,000 or something. I'm not kidding.
Oop, okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's like made out of like supernatural fibers and like
Oh wow.
super
Okay.
sustainable,
A
whatever.
little counterintuitive there with
Yeah.
what I was trying to go for, but still. So, essentially, the whole idea there was, you wake up in the morning and you don't have to decide what you want to wear, because what
Yep.
you're gonna wear is like the cleanest pair of gray t-shirt that you own, or like the cleanest pair of turtleneck that you own. And I had the same thing with my kurtas. Out of the four kurtas that I had, all of which I absolutely love, their design and all of that, it really defined me in terms of style. But at the same time, those were the four kurtas that I had, and whichever one was back from laundry, I would just wear that.
Yeah.
And so it took very little brain space in my head every morning, and you could use that same amount of brain space for other things.
Yep.
So it was all a part of this whole greener lifestyle that I was trying to lead. That's how I adopted minimalism, and it kind of extended to other aspects of my life, like in terms of making my own toothpaste and all of that, which I'll maybe talk about some other time. But yeah, it was interesting. And then it kind of, I had to throw it out of the door, because it often, the whole idea of having just 100 items was a little too rigid, according to me. I feel like we really need to strive for balance in all aspects of life, and that's become my new mantra, rather than just like, oh, minimalism, and sticking to rigid definitions. And so that's been a healthier philosophy that I kind of adopted, and it basically was thrown out of the door when I did come to the US, and land of excess, but also because you needed a different set of clothes for different seasons. Like
Yeah, that's
your
true.
autumn wear was totally different, and then winter you need at least 10 layers. So being minimalist in winter in the winter in Boston is a terrible idea. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember being so inspired by your 100 items experiment, where I remember after that I started literally donating or like picking out everything from my wardrobe, kitchen, home, and literally giving it all away. And Nikhil was like so pissed off with this idea. He's like, what is happening? Where is all the stuff in our house? Like, why are we living like no like
Hermits.
nomads and yeah, like hermits? And I remember I did like this whole detox of my wardrobe where honestly, if you think about it, um, idea of consumerism is really bombarded onto us, right? And societally, it's just such an effective propaganda that you need to have more.
Even
Advertisements promote that as well, right?
online, like big
Yeah.
data, they have so much on you. Every time you log on, like they will be always pushing some ad or the other, right? Like
Yeah,
Google ads or
and
whatever.
just like the advent of consumerism, because like if you think about it, even a few decades back, this wasn't the case, right? This started with the influx of like industrial revolution where people had more disposable incomes. More stuff was being made, first of all, right? And so if people had more money, they would buy more stuff, and there was more stuff. There was, you needed to store it. And that was like almost associated with prosperity, right? Like economies that were evolving to be more prosperous meant that you needed to buy more, eat more, have more, wear different clothes, high, like more brands. And then this whole concept of luxury just took over. And for some reason, it all felt like, well, only if you have all these things is when you'll have a a successful life or a happy life. And this idea was pretty much force fed into societies. And I think now we're suddenly like at this place where I don't know if it's suddenly or it's like just evolved to be an area where we're realizing that our self-worth isn't really tied to the possessions that we have, and the ideas of success are really changing. It's more
Yup.
it's more to do with really having that balance. And do you have peace of mind? Do you have more free time in life? Do you
Yes.
have time for time for things that actually matter, right? Like family, friends, being able to experience life to its fullest versus just having everything and still being mentally like not at a peaceful place.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly why our society's response to that entire like couple of years or decades that we've been through is now, oh, mindfulness. That's like the buzzword, right? And minimalism, I think, also extends to like your mind, in the sense that just like you're clearing physical clutter from your life in order to feel like mentally better, like even decluttering your mind is like super important. That's why mindfulness, vipassana, like just mental hygiene is like an idea that has become all the rage now, especially to fight like anxiety and depression that are just so prominent in our today's culture and day and age. And a friend of mine actually talks about this in a beautiful way. She actually equates our mind as like a big house with a lot of small rooms, or like even a dollhouse that when you see a dollhouse from the side, and then you have all these tiny rooms. And then imagine taking like a feather duster and actually dusting each and every room of the dollhouse. And we need to keep doing that for our mind from time to time, and that's why practices like Vipassana, where you take a 10-day retreat once in a year to just pause, slow down, and reflect and look inward, really are so satisfying in terms of just helping you to add so much perspective in a world where you're just bombarded with content all the time.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing is, when you talk about this whole minimalism and mindfulness, all these are like the current buzzwords, or at least have become super mainstream for the past couple of years. The funny thing is, this isn't new. Like this isn't
Yeah.
like none of this is like revolutionary ideas, because if you think about it, in olden times or before the industrial revolution, people already lived like this, right? Or the ascetic lifestyle of the yogi in ancient India, or like early humans were generally living with less. They were using what they needed. They literally built everything from scratch.
Stoicism in Greece. Yeah. It's
Stoicism
like,
and
yeah.
absolutely, right? Being balanced in your emotions,
Yeah.
in your physical, like worldly pursuits. And so we're almost like going back to that phase, if you think about it. And even the
Life is
generations
cyclical.
before us,
Yeah.
yeah, life is cyclical, right?
Yeah.
Even before us, the generations before us, I don't think our grandparents were extremely
Not our grandfather though.
consumerist. Yeah, actually, that's true.
Our
Yeah, maybe
grandfather has
not
this
Tatya.
amazing obsession with collecting mementos or curios, or like, what are they
Or
called,
just
when the
stuff.
shops that, you know, what
Souvenirs.
souvenirs,
Wherever he
exactly.
travels around the world, yeah.
Wherever around the world, he has like, we have like a mini version of every wonder of the world
Yeah,
in the
and also
house.
I think his generation was the one, like, I mean, it was him in his generation where like he
The
had,
whole advent of
yeah,
just consumerism
and
and
travel, right?
capitalism.
He
Oh
was a
yeah.
doctor who lived in the UK, then went to Saudi Arabia. So like I guess he also had access, and that whole disposable income concept, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think his cousins who had a more simple living, or didn't really throw like tons of money at stuff, right? But I think Tatya's trying to find that balance too. So
You
that's good.
think? I
I
don't
hope
think
so.
so at all. He's very happy and like with living in his disillusions about
Yeah, and
life.
honestly, I don't think it's. I think part of minimalism also, the one thing I understood also when I was on this whole phase of, oh my God, I need to get rid of everything, and have like, I don't know, 10 pieces of clothing or whatever, that started becoming very unrealistic too, because I realized that despite all of that, I didn't really feel like there was less clutter in my mind, because that almost became an obsession for me. And so minimalism doesn't mean getting rid of everything and literally living like a nomad, but it really means decluttering your life in a way, or designing your life in a way where it is simple and frees up time in your mind to do things that you actually enjoy and actually value, or things that bring you
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah,
So
because
if
even if you
buying more
have,
stuff makes Tatya happy, then I think more power to him, right?
yeah,
Obviously, but
absolutely.
it's kind of counterintuitive that yeah, we're all talking about having less stuff, and some people do still buy
Yeah,
a
also
lot of
like the
stuff.
most stuff you own, the most stuff you have to maintain. You have to have the
A
time and the
hundred
resources to
percent,
maintain
yeah.
that time, like maintain those things. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think people of our generation are also very practical now. Like, people aren't, at least, I mean, I can speak for like friends of mine who don't feel like, at least like some of them, right? Who don't feel like I need to have a certain car or a certain type of house, or carry a certain type of,
Yeah,
wear a
that's also
certain type of.
because our generation is like living on the credit economy, right? Compared to our parents, where they would like save. Like their idea of saving was different, whereas now our generation just doesn't want any kind of liabilities to hold them back, you know?
100%. They
So
they
that's a
value,
different reason altogether, I feel like, in
yeah,
some ways.
they
Yeah,
also value experiences more,
that's
right? I
true.
know I value experiences more. And
Yeah.
like, I remember a few years back, Nikhil and I made this pact that we're not going to buy stuff for each other on our birthdays or special occasions. We want to do interesting things, or we want to experience different things. So a lot of that includes for us travel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we spend a majority of our money on just travel, which is
Which
again a
is
whole
awesome.
different topic about sustainable travel, sustainable tourism. That's a
Yeah.
different topic. But then
Yeah,
buying a
and
new
also
thing versus
just that
having building
traveling.
memories.
Yeah, also just that traveling by itself might not just solve like the anxiety around like stuff or whatever, because traveling to what end? Is it like the kind of travel where you click click click, upload upload upload, and even that kind of feeds into this whole negative cycle about just uh comparison on social media, and just how social media in itself affects kind of permeate our lives, and that's perhaps a different topic, but
No,
just to see how they all are
I think
related.
it is related, because when you think about applications of minimalism, right? When you think
Mm-hmm.
about applying minimalism to different aspects of your life, one is the physical worldly possessions, which I think we spoke a lot about. But the other one is what you're saying, technology and social media. Are you adopting a balanced and minimalistic approach towards how much are you letting social media rule your life, and get sucked into this whirlpool of constant comparison of, hey, I've been to so many countries, or
Yep.
I've traveled so much, look at all this travel I've done.
Yep.
Like, is that that's not minimalism either, right? Because I
Yep.
guess because that's still bringing you anxiety and still having
Yeah.
mind clutter, so that's
Yep.
totally not serving the purpose.
Yep. I completely agree. And yeah, I feel like part of our generation is getting like more aware of that, but also it's become woke in a lot of ways to be, it's like the new fad, right? Like minimalism is the new fad. I'm gonna invest in experiences is a new fad almost, but
Sure.
and also like wardrobe swaps, like being green is symbol of how woke you are and how cool
And
you
how
are.
progressive and
Yeah,
how
exactly.
informed you are as a person, right?
Yes.
And like wardrobe swaps reminds me of just hand me downs, like how the generations before us were already woke, right? If you think about it, because a
Absolutely.
lot of what we wore was also like hand me downs. And I think in the episode on growing up middle class in India, we definitely spoke about how frugal and resourceful
Yeah.
everybody was, right? We were
Yeah,
always
like
exchanging
I
clothes or
remember
borrowing clothes.
this one t-shirt or this poncho that you had, which was made up of one of mummy's old saris.
Oh
I don't know if you remember
yeah,
that, but it was
I
such a
remember
gorgeous
that.
poncho. Like
That's
we just
true.
like cut her sari
This
up.
pink
It was
and
a
black
chiffon. Yeah, it was a
bandhani
pink and black
sari.
bandhani chiffon sari.
Yeah,
It was
tie and dye
lovely.
sari. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, and I think like that is also part of minimalism, right? Being
definitely
understanding how to be
upskilling.
sustainable. Yeah,
Yeah, and then understanding like you know
the
being
barter system.
the barter system, and that also like being green is both like, oh, you're being environment friendly but also being minimalist at the same time. Like I think they go hand in hand in a lot of ways. If you are
Mm-hmm.
minimalist, you are definitely a greener person, in terms of your carbon
Your carbon
footprint.
footprint.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of your carbon footprint. And like it's the idea of having a circular economy versus a linear
Hmm.
economy, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
think you spoke about this a little while earlier. I think in the middle,
oh, I did.
growing
Okay.
up middle class episode. No,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
definitely.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely. And something else I really like is the idea of the gift economy, which is,
Mm-hmm.
it's in one of my favorite books. It's called Walk On, Walk Out, and it basically is a book that features some of the most radically sustainable communities from all around the world who are daring to live the future today. And that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much like their tagline, right? And in that, there's this whole idea of the gift economy where it's you're not really buying anything, but you're just gifting things along the way to people. So it's something
Mm-hmm.
like the barter system, but you're gifting things without any expectation in return whatsoever, and gifting things that people really need.
Hmm.
And this is at the level of community, or like at a village, and it's a beautiful concept, and I'd urge you to like look explore it more for sure.
Yeah,
So
I'll check it out. I think the only other thing I want to add to this is like the application of minimalism in relationships too, right? Where I remember growing up, it was more about, hey, how many, oh, look at me, how popular I am, or how many friends I had. But now it's, again, this is something I guess as you mature, as you grow older, you come to the realization of like having quality relationships in your life over how many friends, the quantity of number of relationships or acquaintances
absolutely.
of people you have, right? And like really investing and nurturing those relationships which matter and bring joy in your life and infuse positivity or love, or really make you feel your best self, right? Be it friends, your family, your partner, people at work. And applying minimalism in that aspect in a way like changed my life and in for the better, right? Because
Yup.
I constantly think of who are the like 4 or 5 people who I want to hold on to versus like the rest of the crowd, which yeah, was great hanging out, but that was it, right? That was I guess a relationship of convenience or that time or whatever.
No, absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree with you.
And balance is key in everything, like you said earlier,
Yeah,
right? You don't want to go either way.
yeah,
So
exactly. I agree. And I think that's a good way of summing up this entire thing. I think anything
yes.
in extreme is like not healthy. And I often reflect about this, even in terms of just how you and I are, right, as people. I feel like we're just so opposite each other
That's true.
in so many ways, guys, like as siblings often tend to be. But we both are, I think we both for the most part try to inform each other about how sometimes we might be being too extreme, and push
And our
each other
blind
to be more,
spots.
yeah, our blind spots. And also like we both are striving to meet in the middle, meet each other in the middle, but also like just be more balanced people. And I
Yeah.
really find that beautiful, the fact
I
that,
think we're getting closer, and that's one of the reasons we do this podcast as well. So it's been
yeah.
super fun. Awesome. Guys,
It
in the
is.
spirit of being minimalist, we want to keep this episode quite crisp, right? So we're at 30 minutes, and we definitely want to end it here. Hopefully, guys, we can hear from you about, what are your ideas on minimalism? Do you prescribe to it? Do you not? Do you think it's totally cuckoo, or have you already tried it? Like, what do you think? Please share your thoughts on it. We would love to hear them. write to us on social media and Gmail. So yeah, keep listening and stay curious.
Peace out.
Hey Desis, if you enjoyed this episode, then please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and wherever else you're listening to podcasts.
Yes, and give us 5 stars now, please. Not the chocolate, I meant the rating.
Aarti, terrible joke. Very, very bad.
Come
You're
on.
horrible at PJs.
You are the queen of PJs. What are you saying?
try.
You're telling me?
No one knows what 5 stars is.
Of course they do.